Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Today is September the 19th, 2017. Let's talk boxing. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, no doubt by now you've heard that the Golovkin-Canelo or Canelo-Golovkin fight, however you want to view it, was officially scored a draw. What I want to do here is to invite you, the public, to leave your thoughts about that in the comment section to this video. Whether you agree with me or not, right? I'm going to give you my views on the fight. We'll talk rounds. But whether you agree with me or not, I want you to leave your comments in the comment section to this video. Let me just point out, you do have views that support different outcomes, right? Floyd Mayweather's father, Floyd Sr., believes that the fight was a draw. Former heavyweight champion George Foreman believes the fight was a draw. Lennox Lewis and Paulie Malignaggi believe that this fight was an injustice, that Golovkin was the clear winner and got robbed. Now, let me just say this, in terms of bias. I picked Golovkin to win the fight. My hedge was Canelo by knockout. I lost on both halves of the play. Somewhere, some entrepreneurial casino is laughing with glee at their take, and it includes my money, right? So perhaps I'm biased in my analysis of the fight. But let me say unequivocally, this fight is not Manny Pacquiao-Jeff Horn, right? That was a fight where you saw the fight and I understood that there were going to be people on both halves of that fight. Now, this fight is qualitatively different, right? Because if Manny Pacquiao had chased Jeff Horn around the ring like Golovkin chased Canelo, then Manny Pacquiao would have been the clear winner in that fight. For the record, I thought Golovkin won this fight. We'll talk about margin and stuff like that. The key factors for me in looking at the fight was after the third round, there is a work rate gap between the two fighters, right? You kind of knew this going into the fight based on historical CompuBox numbers. Simply put, Golovkin throws more punches per round than Canelo, right? I thought that Golovkin had the higher work rate for most of the fight. I thought that work rate really, in my opinion, should have given him the decision. I also thought that there was a stamina gap in the fight. Now, it's interesting. Had this been a 3-round fight, I would have taken Canelo, right? Canelo, when he's fully rested, on his A game, brings certain things to the table that Golovkin can't match. For example, Canelo has the faster hands. The hand speed gap in the first 3 rounds is pronounced, right? It's amazing how big the gap is. Canelo also throws, in my opinion, the wider assortment of punches, right? He has a great left hook up top. You see it here in this fight, and he can lead with it. Canelo's a deep fighter, right? He doesn't need to set up the punch. He can lead with that left hook up top. He has a great left to the body. He has an excellent straight right hand. He can throw uppercuts with both hands, and he can lead with the uppercut. He has a back foot game. I believe in this fight he showed too much of it. But he has a back foot game where he can fight you backing up, and he's explosive. In other words, he frames his punches better than Golovkin. The fighters look like they're just looking at each other, and then Canelo busts out with something that looks explosive, right? That looks judge-friendly. Now, here's what's bad about Canelo, right? He's a bit lax defensively when he's backing away, right? You'll notice he's backing away, and often he doesn't have a hand up. He's a bit too upright when he's backing away, right? You'd kind of prefer a fighter, bent a little bit, hiding his chin a little bit more, backing away like this. Canelo sometimes just backs away, standing upright, exposed. Now, I believe a lot of that has to do with the fact that Canelo's a puncher, right? He's accustomed to beating you up, having you so hurt that you're not throwing anything back. Canelo's also a bit episodic. In other words, you're watching a round, he's backing up, he's doing next to nothing. Then he puts together little snippets, and it's snippets, right? A burst of energy for 10 seconds here. 3 good punches there, right? But there's a space between his explosions. Also, Canelo, in part because he is a little bit too upright to be, can be hit with a jab. I think you see that in this fight. I think Golovkin, especially early on, is hitting Canelo with an assortment of jabs. Let me also say, too, that Canelo has a foot speed problem, we'll call it. It's pronounced in this fight. You'll notice in this fight, or perhaps you've noticed since the fight's already happened, that Golovkin is able to throw punches and then back out as Canelo is trying to get his offense going. Right? Golovkin is a master, absolute master, at timing, in addition to being a master at spacing. An argument can be made that other than his power, which is prodigious, his real game is one of timing and spacing. So Golovkin seemed to know a lot of this fight when Canelo was going to throw punches, and he was able to then just move backwards. Now the key is there's some A-level fighters who can follow you as you back up. Right? Saul Alvarez is not one of them. In other words, Saul Alvarez, for all he's doing, is pretty flat-footed, and he's pretty local. Right? He's not a guy who, as you back up, he's going to step forward and follow you like Golovkin can. Right? By the way, that's what Golovkin is doing this entire fight. Canelo is backing up after the 3rd round, and Golovkin is following him, closing the distance. Canelo in some rounds is going from rope to rope. And guess what? Golovkin is following him from rope to rope. Right? Unless an opponent is reeling, I don't believe the roles could be reversed. I don't believe Canelo moves well enough to follow a guy from rope to rope, unless the guy is stumbling, badly hurt, and can't defend himself. So let's ring the bell right here, and let's look at round 1. Now, Triple G comes out more aggressively than I expected. He's on his front foot. He's working behind a jab, and yes, in my opinion at least, that jab is landing in part because Canelo's not that mobile with his head. He's mobile at times. But that's the point. He's episodic even defensively. Right? But Canelo had so much more hand speed. I mean, the gap really is profound. Right? He has so much more hand speed, and hand speed dazzles. So when he throws punches in combination, I was dazzled. I gave the 1st round to Canelo. Then you get to the 2nd round. Now, if you are a Canelo fan, I personally believe this 2nd round is one of the best rounds Canelo has had in his career. Both fighters are fully rested, right? Both fighters are fully rested. And you'll notice when they're fully rested with a full tank, Canelo's the better fighter. So Canelo throws down a masterpiece round. You'll notice his punches are not only faster than Golovkin's, they're shorter than Golovkin. He throws a spectacular uppercut, right? He can move forward, he can move backward. But what I liked in the second round is he's not running. He's standing his ground somewhat. And as Golovkin comes in on him, he's making Golovkin pay for it. I thought the second round was the best round of the fight for Saul Alvarez. Now keep in mind, I'd already given him the first round. He looked so good in the second round that I thought, you know what, if he can keep this going, he not only wins this fight, he dominates the fight. So then we get to the third round, right? Keep in mind, I've given the first two to to Canelo, right? We get to the third round, and Canelo decides he's going to be on his front foot, right? But Canelo on his front foot doesn't move as fast or as well as Golovkin on his front foot. Now, the dam breaks, in my opinion, in the third round. Because at some point in the third round, it looks to me, less than 3 full rounds into the fight, that Canelo has run out of gas. I'm not kidding. You notice that the Maserati that you saw in the first and second rounds is operating on half a tank by the end of the third round. Now, I gave the third round to Canelo. You can imagine how worried I was, right? I picked Golovkin to win the fight. Here's Canelo looking faster-handed than Golovkin, throwing a shutout on my scorecard at the end of 3. But understand, in the third round, you notice that the Saul Alvarez you're watching in that round is not the Saul Alvarez who fought in the second round. He's already slowing down. Folks, then we get a different fight, right? The fourth round. Golovkin is doing what he wants. Then when Canelo fights back trying to counter, you'll notice Golovkin just simply moves backwards, right? Much better defense than advertised, right? Great timing. He knows exactly what he's doing, right? He hits Canelo. He has that lunging left hand blocked. He's able to just move back. Canelo's punches fall short. Canelo can't take the extra step to keep him engaged. Canelo doesn't move fast enough, where as Golovkin is pulling away, Canelo then uses the opportunity to have Golovkin on his back foot for the next 10 seconds, right? He doesn't have that. You also notice in the fourth round that Golovkin is able to cut off the ring and gets Canelo on the ropes, right? The fifth round, I notice Golovkin makes an adjustment. Golovkin's the taller man. In the fifth round, you'll notice he actually comes out lower. He stooped a little bit more than he has been the first 3 rounds, right? He gives you the impression that he can get Canelo on the ropes anytime he wants, right? This isn't a fight in which he's lost the first 3 rounds. Let me say this too. Canelo, on occasion, gets off big punches. Let's just say Golovkin is one hell of a poker player. In other words, after a big shot, Golovkin doesn't even smile. Right? Golovkin doesn't even waste time trying to shake his head and convince the room that he's not hurt. Golovkin immediately tries to come back. He has an absolutely granite chin. He took Canelo's best punches in this fight. Let me also say, too, that Golovkin, timing is just part of his game. He can time the right hand, right? He's very accurate. More importantly, I want you to just focus on his right hand in that 5th round. You're going to notice he's changing the angles on it, right? And he's able to land it. In other words, his timing is such that he sees an opening, he's able to throw that right hand. He's not spending time thinking about how he's going to throw it, even though he's throwing it at different angles repeatedly. So by the end of the 5th round, even though Golovkin's still losing the fight, you understand that the fight has changed completely. 2nd round, it looked like Canelo had the capability to run away with it. By the end of the 5th round, I gave Golovkin the 5th round. You understood that Canelo was out of gas, using his back foot a bit too much. And you understood that Golovkin was on his front foot with much better stamina. So let me say, round 6, my notes indicate that Canelo was just on the ropes too much. In other words, we're not even out of the first half of the fight. And you notice that Canelo is trying to take breathers on the ropes. Round 7, very bad round for Canelo. Golovkin is hunting. Nothing can stop him. At the end of the round, Abel Sanchez, Golovkin's cornerman, quietly says to Golovkin, look, you need to close out the last 20 to 30 seconds of this round a little bit better. Don't give him the opportunity to try to throw a flurry at the end of the round. But keep in mind, I thought no one was fooled in the first 2.5 minutes of the round. By this point in the fight, in my opinion, Golovkin's dominating. So we get to the 8th round. Canelo throws the best punch of the fight. It's a short uppercut. It stuns Golovkin. Golovkin actually freezes for a moment, right? He's not able to pretend as if it didn't shake him. But understand, Canelo at this point is so episodic that Golovkin outworks him by a wider margin for the rest of the round. Right? I gave the 8th round to Golovkin. Right? 9th round starts great. Right? Great start to the 9th round. Canelo looks good early. Unfortunately for Canelo, these rounds aren't 1-minute rounds. They're 3-minute rounds. So stamina again rears its ugly head. Golovkin gets him over to the side of the ring. Right? You don't get the feeling that this is the Rumble in the Jungle. This isn't Ali up on the ropes wanting George Foreman to throw himself out. Right? That George Foreman's kind of like Anthony Joshua. Right? Had hardly gone the distance. Look it up. Here, Canelo had to realize that Golovkin has great stamina. Not good stamina. He has great stamina. Right? Great stamina. I know he's stopping a lot of guys. But at the end of those fights, he's not winded. Right? That's not a sloppy finish where both guys are leaning on each other and stuff like that. So here, when Canelo goes over to the side of the ropes, I get the feeling it's to get breathers, not to get Golovkin to punch himself out. So after a great start in round 9, Golovkin gets Canelo over to the side of the ropes yet again, and in my opinion, works him over and wins the round. So, let me also say too, round 9 has a signature moment. Canelo lands a wide open right hand right on Golovkin's chin. Golovkin channels Marvin Hagler. right? Just like Hagler against Thomas Hearns, gets hit with the right hand and then continues coming forward. Here Golovkin gets hit with the right hand. And as you're looking at it thinking, oh, what's going to happen? Before you know it, Golovkin's coming forward. He's throwing his own shots. I gave the 9th round to Golovkin. Now let's talk about 2 controversial rounds here. The 10th and the 11th. Right? For you to believe that Canelo deserved the draw in this fight, after a middle of the fight, rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. After 6 rounds of Golovkin dominance, that's what it was, right? 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. So it's 6 rounds of Golovkin dominance. For you to believe that Canelo, in a fight where no one hits the canvas, deserved a draw, you would have to believe that Canelo sweeps the 10th, 11th, and 12th. YouTube Nation, I'm guessing there's a group of you out there who believe that that's exactly what happened. Right? Make your case in the comment section to this video. Let me say this. Round 10, great start by Canelo. Great start. But again, these are 3-minute rounds. If it's a 1-minute round, hey, I'd give the round to Canelo. Unfortunately, after the great start by Canelo, you then watch the next 2 minutes of the round. And it's Golovkin on his front foot throwing the greater volume. By the way, Golovkin, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he lands more punches than Canelo in something like 9 or 10 of the 12 rounds. So, in round 10, I thought Canelo had a great start. With 2 minutes left in the round, Canelo is already on the ropes. And he's getting hit with some shots. If I had to give the round to someone, right? And it's a close round. If I had to give the round to someone, it would be Golovkin. But because the round is so close, I mean, it's so close, I call the 10th round a 10-10 round. Right? In other words, if I watch a round and it is so close that I have to take out a microscope to figure out which horse had his nose across the line first, I'm going to call it a 10-10 round. Let's get to the 11th round. Canelo comes out and looks the best he's looked in several rounds. But again, Golovkin seems to be... Golovkin's fighting the fight he wants to fight. In other words, if you ask me the question of who is getting the other person out of their game the most, it's Golovkin getting Canelo out of his game. There seems to be a double standard with regard to Golovkin. Any other world-class fighter, if I saw Anthony Joshua, right, hunting down a guy where the guy is on rope 1, then he's on rope 2, then he's on rope 3, he's on his back foot, he's being outthrown, he's being outlanded, but the guy on his back foot gets off a few sporadic, good, clean combinations, I would think that Anthony Joshua won the round, right? Because Joshua's the hunter. He's doing the hunted. The other guy's on his back foot. The other guy, hasn't knocked Anthony Joshua down. The other guy's getting outthrown. With Golovkin, for some reason, we think differently. So round 11, if I had to shade the round, and round 11's close, folks. It's close like this, right? Can't even see through it. If I had to pick one guy who won round 11, it would be Canelo. But because this round, like round 10, is so close, I called this round a tie. Right? So then we get to round 12. Canelo comes out. He throws the cleaner punches. He frames the punches better. In other words, they're looking at each other, then Canelo lands clean, like 2-3 hard shots. Canelo's really more of the combination puncher, right? Golovkin is more of the jab, jab, big punch guy, right? Canelo's the guy who looks pretty, right? It's, boom, uppercut, left hook, he frames it better. So in round 12, both guys are tired. Because Golovkin is trying to be aggressive at the end, he gets out of something that he was doing very well earlier in the fight. In other words, when Canelo starts throwing punches, Golovkin in the 7th and 8th rounds just moves away. Right? The punches don't land. In the 12th round, Golovkin tries to stay in the pocket, which is a mistake. I thought Canelo wins the 12th round. But understand, that 12th round is the first round that I had given Canelo since the 3rd round. So, let's talk about my card. I thought Golovkin was the clear winner. I agree with Lennox Lewis. Right? I thought Golovkin was the clear winner in this fight. I gave Canelo the 1st round, the 2nd round, the 3rd round, and the 12th round. Right? I gave Canelo 4 rounds. I gave Golovkin the 4th round, the 5th round, the 6th round, the 7th round, the 8th round, the 9th round. I gave Golovkin 6 rounds. And I had the 10th and the 11th rounds as a draw. So my card is 6 for Golovkin, 4 for Canelo, 2 draws. Right? Now, I'm stunned. I'm stunned that people actually think this fight was a draw. Right? I don't get it. Let me point out in real time on Twitter. And if you have the Twitter feed, Twitter never erases tweets. If you have the Twitter feed, individuals can, but not Twitter. You'll notice that Lou DiBella, before the judges' scorecards were announced, right? DiBella, the famous boxing promoter, right? Boxing Insider. You'll notice that Lou DiBella actually says, great fight. He loved the fight. Great fight. Let's hope the judges do the right thing. Golovkin won this fight. In other words, I believe the consensus is these guys gave us a great fight, and they did. But Golovkin was the one who deserved the victory. Right? Now, how... Well, I'll just say this. Boxing is set up to protect us from judges having off nights. Right? That's why we have more than one judge, right? We have 3 judges. 3 judges. Right? Back in the old days, the referee used to, say, hey, here's my scorecard, and you have fights where the ref is the only one making the decision. But in championship fights today, 2017, we have 3 judges. So you have one judge who had a terrible night, turned in a card that even Canelo's promoter thought was ridiculous. Right? Understand, that was the only judge who had Canelo winning this fight. Now, the other 2 judges, 115, 113, I could see that. But wow, the 114, 114 just doesn't sit well. What I want people in the comment section to do here is to tell me the last fight where you had a guy land more punches than the other guy in something like 9 of the 12 rounds in a fight with no knockdowns, in a fight where one guy is the aggressor and the other guy is continually back up against the ropes, right? Where people felt the fight was a draw. Keep in mind, Golovkin's not cut. You don't have a visual as you have in some fights. I remember I saw a Jorge Linares fight once where Linares was cut. And even though the action in the ring wasn't really that unbalanced, Linares looked like he was losing the fight because it was his blood all over the place. You don't even have blood all over. You don't have any blood from Golovkin. Right? No blood from Golovkin. He's out throwing and he's out landing Saul Alvarez. Right? Who is going from rope to rope. Let me point out too. And Saul needs to think about this. When a Floyd Mayweather gets badly hurt, the Shane Mosley fight, right? Mayweather understood that for that moment, he couldn't go over to the ropes because it's a bad visual. So when he was badly hurt by Shane Mosley, what did Mayweather do? He stayed in the middle of the ring. He held on to Mosley. You remember that? He held on to Mosley. But he stayed in the middle of the ring. When Mayweather goes over to the ropes against Ricky Hatton or Marcus Maidana, he makes sure that it looks like he's in control. In other words, guys over by the ropes try to pick the rope where they're going to go over to. Right? You're out there, you're a little tired, or you want the other guy to throw himself out. So you'll pick a spot on the ropes, and you'll be there while the guy is throwing himself out. Now here it's a terrible visual of Saul Alvarez going, in my opinion, from rope to rope. In other words, you have rounds here where Golovkin gets Saul Alvarez with his back up against the ropes, let's say over here on the east side. Then Canelo backs away. So Golovkin follows him. Then they're over here in the north side of the ring, where Canelo has his back up against the north rope. Then Canelo backs away. Right? Golovkin follows him. Then Canelo is up against the west rope. Now you're going to tell me in a multi-rope, back up against the rope fight, where there are no knockdowns, right? There are no knockdowns. You're going to tell me that the guy with his back up against the ropes chronically every round after the third round deserves a draw? I don't get it. Let me say this too. You know, the Rumble in the Jungle, folks, that ended by stoppage. I'm sure even Ali understood that, look, I'm not going to win the heavyweight title. Just rope-a-doping for 12 rounds. Now, let's get this straight. The unified champion at middleweight going into this fight is Golovkin. Right? I'm old school. You've got to take the guy's belt to win the belt. Don't you? I'm a little bit flabbergasted. Now, granted, the draw has Golovkin leaving with his belt. I'm telling you, both guys benefited from Canelo not being deemed the winner of this fight. Because if Canelo was called the winner of this fight, there would have been outrage, in my opinion. Forget that Oscar De La Hoya has him winning 115, 113. I think most people watching this fight knew that Canelo had lost the fight. I'm sure when you heard the fight was a draw, your first thought might have been, and tell me if I'm right in the comment section of this video, Canelo got a break. Think about it too. The crowd, and I want you to listen to the crowd when they announce a draw. if they had just seen a thrilling fight that was a coin flip that could have gone either way, right? If this were some great fight where you're looking at the fight, Larry Holmes, Ken Norton in the 70s, where you're looking at the fight and you're saying, who's going to win this fight? And it comes down to the last round and you're thinking, who's going to win this round? Right? Had they announced that Larry Holmes, Kenny Norton fight as a draw, you would have been cheering. You would have thought, you know what? These guys came in here and gave us that much of a razor close fight. Right? Hell, Ken Norton, Ali. Right? The last fight. The Yankee Stadium fight. Right? If they call it a draw, you're like, hey, well, you know, this fight was that close. Well, all I'm saying here is they call this fight a draw and the crowd groans. Do you think anyone in that crowd was surprised to learn that Golovkin threw more punches than Canelo and landed more punches than Canelo? Realistically, how many people in that crowd do you believe thought that Saul Alvarez had won the fight? Keep in mind, you knew the crowd wasn't groaning because they thought Canelo had been ripped off. Quite the opposite. I believe they saw the middleweight champion successfully defend his title, and then you have judges who are looking at rounds like round 10 and round 11. Razor close rounds. Razor close rounds. And they're deciding to give those rounds to Canelo. Think about it. In a fight where he's the challenger. So, this decision, I'm not buying it. Unfortunately for me, the casino has my money and all I could do is shrug and remind myself that you're not betting on the actual fight, you're betting on the way the fight is scored. Right? But I just don't see how Canelo could have expected to take Golovkin's title on his back foot going from rope to rope, having the champion throw more punches than he did, right, in practically every round. Let me hear from you. Again, I gave Canelo the first 3 rounds and the 12th round. I gave Golovkin from round 4 to round 9. I had the 10th and 11th rounds a draw. Tell me about your scorecard. I hope you do so in the comment section to this video. Let me say this too. Understand that the rematch clause is unilateral. In other words, Golovkin doesn't have the ability here to demand a rematch. Only Canelo does. Now, if I'm Canelo, and I know he's a warrior, I know he's a warrior. But if I'm Canelo, I think long and hard about whether I want the rematch. Because understand, you can solve a lot of things. I'm not sure if you could solve a stamina deficit. This isn't the first fight where Canelo has taken off portions of rounds. Right? It's not even close. I don't know what Canelo can do to have his stamina match Golovkin's. Let me also point out too that it's a rough combination because it's stamina and volume. Overlook this fight for a moment. Look at the historical CompuBox numbers for these two fighters. You're going to find out that in general, Golovkin throws more punches than Canelo. Right? In general. So I don't know how Canelo can actually improve his stamina and throw more punches if he exercises a rematch clause and has the rematch for his next fight. Right? So sometimes, Golovkin's in his mid-30s. Sometimes it's better, especially when you didn't get a loss. Right? Canelo officially got a draw with Golovkin. right? Sometimes it's actually better to leave with the draw and then regroup. Take some time fighting other guys. Allow Golovkin to get a little bit older. Maybe Golovkin at this stage of his career is thinking about moving up to 168 pounds. Right? Just food for thought. Let me also say, too, Floyd Mayweather retired 50-0. No draws. Right? Ricardo Lopez, the great fighter, has 1 draw. That's the only blemish on his record. Understand how, to me, disappointing the scoring is in this fight. Golovkin will never be able to match Floyd Mayweather, right? Because Golovkin now has a draw on his record, right? The minute you have a draw, you can't match perfection in boxing, right? Understand, too, Mayweather benefits even more because Mayweather is the one guy to beat Saul Alvarez. So now, 10, 15 years from now, when a new generation becomes the heart and soul of boxing, they're going to look back and they're going to say, hey, well, Mayweather beat Canelo, who got a tie with Golovkin, right? We're going to be talking about the great fighters out there. I'm positive Mayweather's name's going to come up, Golovkin's name's going to come up, Canelo's name's going to come up, right? And in the conversation, it's going to look like Floyd has the better record than Golovkin, right? And that for their common opponent. Floyd was victorious, Golovkin got a draw. It's even worse than that. Boxing fans have the idea that Golovkin must be in decline, right? Because Golovkin won a decision over Danny Jacobs. Forget the fact that Danny Jacobs, really belongs on the pound-for-pound list in boxing. It is one of the sport's most dangerous fighters, right? The narrative is, hey, Danny Jacobs went the distance. Well, you can imagine these critics, and this is what makes the world go round. This is why boxing is great barbershop talk. These critics are now going to say, hey, man, this is the second straight fight where Golovkin wasn't able to stop the guy, right? So there's going to be a level of scrutiny, right? It's going to be worse than that. They'll say, well, hell, he's declining so fast that he went from a win with Danny Jacobs to a draw here. How do I know he's not going to lose his next fight? Right? So the next time you're in a barbershop, I say you since I'm bald, the next time you're in a barbershop and you're getting your hair cut and, the barber or some yahoo reading the magazine in the seat in front of you, is saying, hey, man, yeah, Golovkin, it's over for him and stuff like that. Just ask that person whether they actually saw the fight. Just have that person watch the tape. Just have that person figure out that Golovkin landed more punches than Canelo in 9 or 10 of the 12 rounds. Right? Golovkin is not in decline, quite the contrary. He just beat Danny Jacobs and, in my opinion, Saul Alvarez. Right? He's taking on A-level competition. He's throwing punches. He's dictating the action. He knocks down Danny Jacobs. He has Canelo, in my opinion, after the 3rd round, going from rope to rope to rope. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments and scoring in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.